Hamadakyapi, Nick Tilsen, Amachiapi, Chantea, Washtena Petuzapolo. This is Nick Tilsen, and you're listening to LANDBACK for the People, located right here in the Gesapa, the Black Hills. In this show, we're going to discuss a little bit about what's happening in the world. There's the rise of authoritarianism. There is the threat to the movement, the threat to people fighting and organizing for social justice, for climate justice, for racial justice, racial equity. We're in an era when, in a narrative war, where words like diversity, equity, inclusion, justice have been villainized. And of course, so has LANDBACK. LANDBACK's been villainized too. Been framed as an anti-American narrative, been, tagged with all kinds of political and legal repression. And we're in turbulent times. And in the nonprofit world, and in the philanthropic world, those who fund social justice movements and who fund racial equity movements and who fund movements like the Black Liberation Movement, the Black Reparations Movement, LANDBACK. There has been an effort to villainize us and to try to limit our ability by trying to restrict the resources that are coming to our communities. And so there's a battle in front of us. And in this moment, it requires us to make pivots. It requires us to adapt. It requires us to change and to evolve and to meet the moment. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is happening in the world and how it's affecting Indigenous people, how it's impacting the LANDBACK movement, but also how it's impacting organizations and movement infrastructure that is supporting the movement for it to continue to grow and for it to continue to evolve. And the pivots that we're making, because we made a strategic decision as an organization that we refuse to let the powers that be take us down. We refuse to let the powers that be negatively impact us to the point where we won't be able to move our work forward. And in these moments, we're reminded that these movements are made up of people and human beings, and the organizations themselves are merely the tools. We are, in fact, the mechanics for change, and the institutions themselves are just the tools. And those tools adapt, they change. Sometimes they can become outdated. Sometimes we have to change how we use the tools that are available to us because the powers that be want to restrict our ability to build power. They want to restrict our ability to organize. They want to restrict our ability to achieve the liberation that we're fighting for. And so this show, we're going to dive in full transparency and to share to the people and to the community and to the movement and to our partners the changes that we're making here at NDN Collective to adapt to the moment that we're in. This year also marks 7 years since the organization has been founded, the organization of NDN Collective. And so naturally we reflect, how do we learn from what generations before have done? How do we learn from the past 7 years, and how do we adapt to the political, legal, financial landscape that we find ourselves in? Because we are here to build power, we're here to organize, and we're here to continue to lean into the self-determination of Indigenous people. And LANDBACK is absolutely the path forward to make that happen. We're here back in LANDBACK for the people. And we're here with some amazing relatives who've been organizing, fighting, doing good work in communities, some longer than others. Mm-hmm. And want to give a chance for each of you to introduce yourself here to the audience at LANDBACK for the People.
Hamedak Yapi, Chantewashte nape chuzapie. Tania wakawi imakiapie. Sasituan wakpetuan berewankantu wia hemacha. Good to see everyone, relatives here in the room here, and also to everyone out there that might be listening and sharing with us today. My name is Gaby Strong. I'm Sistan Wapton, Dakota, Berewankantu, Dakota, and I'm the VP here at NDN Collective. Also a mother, a grandmother, and a future generation advocate. And I think that's some of the things that we'll be talking about today.
Hamitakepi Wizipan machapolona sichangula kota hemachana aske gluipi toshpai mataha. Hello, my name's Wizipan, little Garriott. I greet everyone with a good heart. I have the privilege of serving as president here at NDN, along with this awesome leadership here. And really looking forward to digging into stuff today, because there's a lot that has happened, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot that's gonna happen. Both good and bad, and really excited about being ready to meet the moment.
Yeah, so here at NDN Collective, we have a triad. We call it the triad of senior leadership here. And sometimes people from the outside, when they think of a pyramid, maybe they think of a pyramid where it's small at the top and big at the bottom. But in Indian way, in Lakota way, Dakota way, as leaders, we take on responsibility, and a lot of times we have to make hard decisions. We have to be able to see the future. We have to be able to anticipate that there's change coming. And really starting, I would say, almost about a year and a half ago, if people remember this, leading up to the election, there was a lot of different types of predictions about what this election would have and the impact on our people. And no matter what was happening with the election, it was clear that that the narrative was shifting in this country. The narrative was absolutely shifting, and that narrative being shifting was going to impact those that are most vulnerable. So naturally, it was going to impact Indigenous people. We started seeing some of those things here, and so we started making some changes and shifts. But enter into the election, enter into 2025. And we're seeing massive impacts on the social justice movement, on philanthropy, on poor people, Indigenous people, the LANDBACK movement, and really working class, everyday people that are just trying to raise their families. And across the board, we're seeing negative impacts. And so I want us to, talk a little bit about some of the things that you're seeing. I want to start off with Gaby. You've seen a lot of politics ebb and flow and throughout time. But we're in a unique time. This is hard times. And so I want you to share a little bit of your analysis of the things that you're seeing and how Indigenous people and Native people are being impacted at this moment in history.
Yeah. I'll say that I was born in 1963, which was right on the cusp of a time when segregation was still active policy. Racial segregation, still active policy in this country. And that's the time when I was born. And then we saw the civil rights movement. We saw our Red Power movement. We saw American Indian movement. We saw a lot of social justice, civil rights movement immediately thereafter. And from that came a lot of major shifts that we have been able to celebrate today. But in a short period of time, but very planfully and probably in a very stealth approach, we are turning back the clock. The clock has been turned back in terms of policy and rights and funding and federal responsibility to treaty obligations, trust responsibility, all of those things are at immediate, imminent risk right now because of what is happening. And I've often heard our people talk about, it doesn't matter who's in the Oval Office, that things will just be the same for us. And maybe that's true in some ways, but I think that it matters deeply who is in that Oval Office, who is holding those positions, because they are making laws that impact our people. They are making decisions that impact our people. And one of the things that I would really urge and encourage all of us to do, because I know as a grandmother, when I'm sitting with my grandchildren, when I'm sitting with my children, that's the center of my universe. When I'm sitting with my people, my family, and my community, that's the center of my universe. And sometimes, it's easy to forget what might be going on beyond my home, or what might be going on beyond my own tribal boundaries or beyond my own homelands, because we are so focused on our own families, our own communities. But this is a time, relatives, that we really must think beyond that, because of the impacts and the threats and the risks. And we're seeing that. We're seeing targeted attacks. We're seeing targeted attacks on organizations, on movement leaders, on people who are just simply trying to exist. And I think that's something we have to really pay attention to and really activate around today, because the future, our children's future, the future of our lands, the future of our mother, the earth, really rely on us, really tuning in and thinking even beyond our own home, thinking beyond our own communities and what is going on. Because those ripple effects, they're starting to be felt. And there's more coming. There's more being planned that we have to be prepared for. So the only other thing I would say for now is that I don't think anybody fathomed how far those steps could be turning backward. In this moment, I think there's a shock, almost a disbelief that this is where we are. But there's more. There's even more in store, and we must activate around that.
Absolutely. So Wizi, you have a unique perspective because you worked in two different administrations. You've done community work in your own community, Sicangu territory, down there in Rosebud. So yeah, we even let Sichangus on this show just so everybody, everybody in the comment section was like, "Where's the Sichangus? We got one right here." But you always had that unique perspective because you're doing that work in the community, you're doing that work on the res, but you also went to DC. You worked in a historic administration, with Secretary Dub Howland, and they were doing LANDBACK stuff at the Department of Interior, and like who would have known that thing would have happened, And then now there's just like this shift. From your perspective, like, what are you seeing? How is it impacting the lives of Native and Indigenous people everywhere? And what do you think? Yeah, what do you think the biggest challenge is in this moment? In addition to seeing, talking a little bit about how you're seeing tribes and people being impacted by what's going on.
I think the biggest challenge is understanding the magnitude of the shifts and the impacts, and understanding and fathoming that really terrible things are happening and are going and are probably like right on the horizon, in the sense that I remember a friend of mine and you know, leading up to the 2020 election, and she said, you know, the country is, you know, people are getting armed and people, like, stuff is happening, and you know, like saying like there could be a civil war and all this, and I was like, yeah, whatever, like I don't think that's gonna happen. And then I remember January 6th and watching the Capitol of the United States get stormed and seeing all that happen on TV. And I called her up right away and I was like, you were right.
Yeah.
You were right. The lengths that these people are willing to go to destroy, like, just basic democracy, basic ideas of human rights, of our civil liberties, basic ideas of constitutional rights. And, you know, they didn't get back in, and we, you know, had a different administration and some good things happen. But that's where they're coming from. And they took 4 years. They took 4 years and they made a plan of what they were gonna do when they got back into power. And it was a plan to attack and dismantle anybody and anything and any organization, the institutions and the processes that we've all relied upon, court systems, everything that would stand in their way, to the point of even looking to destroy the economy. And so just understanding that this is coordinated, and people have been thinking about and plotting to do this to people for 4 years. And then how does it impact? I think there's many different ways, but you know, I got an uncle, and he says you can always tell the direction of where things are going by the price of bread. He said, go to the grocery store and monitor the price of bread, and that's gonna tell you what's happening. And just for everyday people, you know, they might not be looking at the big politics and, you know, getting on news every day and everything, but you know, they're just surviving, and the price of bread's going up. The ability to just basically feed your family, feed your kids, your grandkids is going up, and that hurts people. And that puts people into a defensive position where they're having to barely survive every day. And when you do that to people, it diminishes your ability to fight back, because you're just trying to put food in your mouth. You don't have the capacity, the energy to take action and to fight back. And I think that, you know, that's a big impact. And then there's this bigger existential thing that tribes and Native people are facing, and that's the threats on our very existence, and trying not to go back to an era of termination where they wanted to just completely terminate us.
Yeah.
And that's on the table right now.
That people are talking about it. You know, people are scared, and you know, those very fundamental premises that we've operated in since the era of self-determination, that's being questioned, and we have to be activated to fight back.
Yeah, it's like you know, I was talking to my family about this recently, you know, because throughout the past, you know, NDN Collective has been in existence for 7 years. 5 of those 7 years I've been under indictment, you know, and some of my family was, you know, asking me why, you know, especially my kids and the younger ones, you know, why? And I said, you know, in these narrative wars, what's under attack is ideas. Ideas like liberation, ideas like LANDBACK, ideas like justice, ideas like freedom. Those ideas are under attack. And therefore, they're attacking the organizations, they're attacking the institutions, they're attacking the movements, they're attacking the leaders that are fighting for those ideas to come to fruition. And the reality is the vast majority of people, you know, believe in a multiracial democracy. The vast majority of people believe in the idea of self-determination, believe in this idea that, you know, we can collectively work together to create a better life for our people. And then there's a very small people who control the economy, who control the economic systems, and it's being driven by those at the very top. And now we have a government that's a reflection of that. We have people in leadership that are a reflection of that. And so as we navigate these things, and as we watch our relatives get kidnapped off the streets,
Right.
you know, deported, detained. We have relatives, you know, that have been kidnapped. We don't even know where they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's happening right now, you know. The threat to tribal sovereignty, saying that the tribes don't have their own right to, you know, make their own laws and, you know, make their own decisions, even though that's what we fought for, you know. And so we find ourselves in these moments, and I think in the nonprofit sector, in the social justice sector, you know, for me there was like a couple big wake up calls, you know, when I started seeing nonprofits internationally, NGOs begin to close down because they cut USAID globally, and most of these folks were providing aid and mutual aid, things like medical services, things like water, things like clothing, things like eyeglasses. And again, it was ideas that were under attack. Naturally, people believe, hey, there's enough to provide for everybody, you know, and the future's here. It's just not equally distributed, you know, and then you started seeing the impacts here within the United States. This administration and leaders saying, we're going to go after the people who fund the movements, who fund change, who fund the organizations and the movements that support these ideas like justice, like equity, like diversity, you know, like liberation, like freedom. And then there's been a constricting that has happened. There's literally less resources in the philanthropic sector today than there was a year ago. People are spending less resources. People are scared to spend the resources that they have. Every time that a funder is thinking about writing a check, they're thinking about, what kind of spotlight does that grantee put on us? Instead of saying, supporting this work is required to achieve racial justice, economic justice. And there's been a constricting. And our organization, who has been working, has been impacted by that. We've been heavily impacted by that. We have seen funding in the philanthropic space decrease in their support to us, but also to everybody across the space, that this is not an isolated thing. Those of us who had partnerships with the federal government, you know, that had grants with the government to move resources to the people, those were frozen. There's lawsuits happening all across the country. The United States government is in breach of billions of dollars of contracts to communities and to people. And yet here we are trying to do change, and we find ourselves at the crossroads. And so when all of this was happening, I was also reflecting, you know, 7 years as an organization, we did so much beautiful things. We catalyzed the LANDBACK movement. I mean, we catalyzed it into the mainstream, into communities all across America. We helped build a new framework that was creating, that is creating change for our people.
Globally too.
Yeah, it's gone way beyond the United States. In addition to that, we got to be a part, you know, of freeing Leonard Peltier, the longest, you know, Indigenous incarcerated political prisoner, you know, in American history. We got to, you know, embark on campaigns that return land back to people, back to tribes, back to community. We got to protect watersheds. Mm-hmm. We got to do so much powerful work. We got to resource, since our founding, over $110 million has went out to Indigenous people from NDN Collective into communities of people doing things like, doing language schools, food sovereignty, frontline organizing. And now we find ourselves having to adapt and change the times that we're in because there's less resources. Yeah. And so we'll jump into what that is. But I think that one of the fundamental things that's, I think, an Indigenous thing that we always do is we're always changing and adapting. Mm-hmm. Our culture has always been evolving and changing and adapting. And I guess in your life, to me, Gaby, how have you seen adaptation happen in real time? Mm-hmm. How have you seen that when things happen, we adapt, we change, we get quick on our feet? Mm-hmm. If you can share, something about that, a story about that.
Yeah. I think over, my lifetime working with community organizations, I've always been in a position to be able to push the envelope, to push and to press, because that's what's required. It's easy to play it safe. It's easy to, give the palatable messaging, to, try to come off as being worthy of resources. That's never been my style, and the people I've always rolled with, we always organized, we always moved in a way that was always pressing and pushing. Because to truly honor self-determination means that the community knows what's best for them. And needs change, aspirations may shift, the context of your community may shift, and therefore what it is that you're doing needs to shift along with that. And as I think of like the moment we're in right now, and as always we have our backdrop, an excerpt of the U.S. Constitution here, honoring the supreme law of the land, which is the basis of our treaty making, right? And it's almost as if these things, these concepts, even democracy itself, which is indigenous, right? This democracy is rooted in this land. This came from our people. The whole concept and idea of democracy came from our people. The foreigners had no concept of that. So, this is a learning for them too. And it's been distorted. And right now, we have seen probably, the most horrible distortion of what democracy looks like. So when we envision this multiracial democracy, this is not it right now. What's happening right now is not it. Because words like equity, justice, liberty are becoming dirty words. And yet, we're taught to pledge allegiance every day, right? But yet now suddenly these are dirty words, and those of us pushing for that are somehow woke and anti-American and dissidents and a whole host of other things. Liberty and justice for all means just that. All. Everybody here. And instead, what we're facing here at NDN has been a real challenge to that. We've seen the challenges, financially. We've seen it politically. We're facing that. We've been navigating that. And just so everybody is clear, we're not going anywhere. We are here to stay and scrap this out. We may do it, a little more efficiently. We may do it a little more differently because that's what the moment requires, and that's what adaptation is. And you know, the only culture that does not evolve is a dead culture. And we are far from that. We are here, we are alive, we have more to do, we have more to share, we have much more to work on. And I think our work right now is more important than ever. And so what we're thinking about in this moment and the adaptation of what's needed in this moment is organizing around those things, liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that's powerful. Weezy, you know, I always remember this time. This is back when you were running the Rosebud Economic Development Corporation, you know, economic development arm of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. And I remember, like, I was doing the project at Thunder Valley. I was running the Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation on my res, and we had a 20-year plan. Yeah, we had a 20-year plan of how to build some affordable housing, you know, bring back our language, you know, do just transition work, and then I visited with Weezy, and Weezy's mind was, you know, we have to have some frameworks for a 100-year plan. And Weezy was like, okay, so the population in Rosebud's going to be, you know, I don't forget what she said, like 300,000 people. We're going to need this much food. We're going to need this much, and just the thinking the 100-year plan. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that recently because in these moments that we're in, mm-hmm. authoritarianism wants us to think small.
Yeah.
Right. They want us to they want us to be in panic mode. They want us to be in chaos. They want us to be fighting with each other so they continue to get away with the things that they're trying to get away with. And I really think that type of thinking, you know, that in these moments, thinking far ahead is key. So like in the spirit of that, you know, in the spirit of, you know, thinking far ahead, what are some of the things that you think that we should be doing as Indigenous people in this moment while all this is happening? What are the top two or three things that we should be doing as a people to move forward?
I think there like when I think of like two things, I think first we need to think big and plan big and be big and bold and visionary and to imagine the world that we want, right? Like our grandchildren's grandchildren, what kind of world do we want them to live in? And then from there, come back and say, what do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to get done this week? What do I need to get done this year? Mm-hmm. And think about it every single day. Am I working towards making that a better life for my grandchildren's grandchildren? And specifically, you know, some of those things that you just mentioned, Nick, you know, I get really mad when I think about philanthropy and government programs and all these things that were supposed to like help us. Mm-hmm. You know, Tony, you said we've always had the answers and the solutions to our own challenges. Mm-hmm. And I think if they had just done what we asked, done what we told them to do, we would be completely self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. We would have our own food systems. We wouldn't be reliant on this, you know, all of these global shifts and challenges. Yeah,
we never wanted to be reliant on the government anyway.
Yeah,
exactly. We'd be able to feed ourselves. That's sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, I grew up, you know, in the 1980s hearing, you know, uncles talk about being energy sovereign. They didn't necessarily use that word, but they talked about not having to rely on all these external sources of power just to turn our lights on. Our own education systems, whatever those things are, that's what we need to be thinking about and imagining big, that ours, and moving towards making those happen and being able to do that even in the face of all these attacks. Because as has been said, part of what they're trying to do is to break the spirit. They're trying to break that spirit. And there is no greater act of defiance, no greater act of rebellion than moving forward with our plan to be independent, to realize our sovereignty as Native nations and as communities and as individuals. And if we do that, we're always going to be free.
If you like listening to the podcast, Land Back for the People, please take your time to donate to the campaign called For the People. This campaign is all about funding the people and funding Indigenous liberation and funding the organizing work that's happening in the Land Back movement. So many of the stories that we get to talk about in the Land Back for the People podcast are stories that are coming from the front lines of people doing that work. But that work needs to continue to be resourced. The work of saving Indigenous languages, investing into Indigenous-led climate solutions, investing into housing, economic mobility of Indigenous people, and helping build the power of our people. To donate and find out more, go to ndnforthepeople.org. And we're just not talking about risk. Mm-hmm. Talking about like, you want to talk a little bit about that, Gaby, about like what's happening like with people that have been organizing and like who's taking risk? Those people are being under attack right now, everywhere.
Yeah, I think folks that have been more vocal in this, authoritarian regime, this repressive system that is now in place are, taking more risk, are being hit harder. The impact is being felt more, whether they are, leaders, movement leaders, whether it is organizations like ours. I think the impacts are being felt. And the changes that we have seen within the last 6 months alone, rollbacks on, women's reproductive health, rollbacks on LGBTQ plus rights, rollbacks on environmental protections, all of these things. I mean, and that's just some of the things that are happening, challenges to birthright citizenship. All of these things is the waters that we are swimming in right now. And so we have to be strong in this moment. We have to be determined. We have to be prepared. We have to be truly activated. And if we weren't as prepared because maybe we didn't expect or fathom these things, we can't waste another minute on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. We've had to make some changes here at NDN Collective, and we're a movement infrastructure organization. So when we make shifts and we make changes, it impacts a lot of people. We purposely built this organization at a scale to meet the need of our people, mm-hmm. and so we have had over 1,400 partners throughout the Indigenous world. We've been able to resource at scalable levels. We've been able to do a lot of amazing work, but we've had some big changes we've had to make here. Can you talk a little bit about some of the changes that we've had to make here internally? And I share this because for us, I want us to create transparency. It's important for us to share candidly what changes we have been making here, and we've been very much under the hood with our heads under the hood, trying to adapt and change, and we've given ourselves the right to be able to do that and adapt this tool so that we can continue to show up. But we've made some pretty big changes that we're adapting to. Can you talk a little bit about some of those?
Yeah. NDN has been one of the most well-resourced organizations, in Indian country, and has done, some really big and amazing work, mm-hmm. and has built up a staff and an infrastructure that, probably, Indian country has never seen before. Mm-hmm. And to support that requires a lot of resources and required a lot of investment. And because of the attacks on NGOs and philanthropy, people are scared.
Yeah.
And because of that, some of the resources haven't flowed like they used to in the past. You know, what used to take us, 2 months, all of a sudden is drawn out to 9 months. Mm-hmm. And, people are scrubbing grant agreements, looking for those banned words like equity. Even words like sovereignty, tribe, all these things. And so it's become a lot harder to be able to get the resources that we need to sustain the at the level we were. And so because of that, NDN has had to cut our budget by nearly in half, and has had to reduce the size of our staff by 40. And that's been hard. I've been here for 6 months, and so I can't even imagine what Gaby, you and Nick have gone through because of you've been here longer and helped build this. On the other hand, we talked about adaptation, and we talked about change, and we talked about being able to evolve. And a part of the work and a part of the strategy is you get smaller to get stronger, right? And to be more nimble, to be able to move more quickly, to cut down on decision-making time. And also to be more out there at the same time. And also realizing that nobody can do it alone, and that at this moment, what is required of us is to build and strengthen unity, not just within Indian country, but across the entire movement. And that's where we're positioning ourselves. That's the path that we're going down. And also, Nick has talked, the organization has been around for 7 years. And, in many of our native traditions, certainly in our Lakota, Dakota traditions, every 7 years, you go through a transformation. And it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
And, we're going through a transformation. We're in the midst of it. And when we look back 7 years from now, I see this as a moment where we're going to say, we got stronger. Indian country got stronger. Despite everything that's happening, we got stronger. And I think that that's really, what we're looking forward to. And it's difficult and it sucks to go through it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when we keep our eye on the big prize, the vision down the road, that's how we're going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also, there's some things I'm really excited about where we're headed, and I want to jump into that. But before I jump into that, I want to address the 40 staff that we were forced to let go because we no longer had the financial resources to keep them here. These 40 staff are members of communities all throughout Indian country. The vast majority of them provided for way more than just the people under their roof, just like every Indian person does everywhere.
Yeah.
One job in Indian country has a ripple effect of change. But in addition to them, being a resource provider for their families, these were creatives, these were storytellers, these were organizers, these were leaders, these were entrepreneurs, they were artists, and they gave their energy to this place. They gave their energy to this place, and they helped catalyze this work forward. And they helped the people. They helped the land. They helped the work that we were doing. And it wasn't just a job.
Yeah.
It was being part of a community and an organization that's holding up a movement that's creating change. And so for me, I wanted to thank all of them. I wanted to, tell all the people out there, that the people who worked here that we had to let go, they're amazing human beings who are deeply love their people, who deeply love the land, and who will fight for the future no matter where they're at. And I send my love and my encouragement to all of them. in wherever they find themselves, because I know that each and every one of them will find themselves at some place in Indian country, in community, creating change, because that's within them. I seen it, I witnessed it, and I mourn that we had to do that.
Yeah.
And at the same time that I mourn that we had to do that, I also quickly pivot to strategy, because we have to show up for our people. Our people and our land are under attack by evil forces.
Yes.
And it requires us to sharpen our spear. And NDN Collective is a spear. It is absolutely a tool, and it's a spear. And we are fighters here. We are the people that will risk. We'll risk our lives for our people, for our land, and for our children. It's inherently part of who we are. It's into the DNA of this place.
Yeah.
And at this moment in history, at the rise of authoritarianism, it is going to require us to get scrappy. It's going to require us to get strategic. And so we've made some strategic changes here at NDN Collective. One, we're doubling down in organizing. During COVID and after the murder of George Floyd, and in that COVID era, people became more isolated. And there was an emergence of more activists and not enough organizers. People in community organizing their people, building people power. So NDN Collective is going to double down in doing trainings, all across the country to develop Indigenous organizers. We've developed a new curriculum, Indigenous organizing curriculum. Our creative resistance team will continue to train people. We are going to continue to resource the movement, resource communities. We're going to continue to create a political agenda, a future that we see ourselves in. And so NDN is organizing our work in two big buckets moving forward. There's the big bucket of what we call our place-based work. That's the work happening right here in the Qaysapa, right here in this community, right here in Rapid City, in the Black Hills. And then on the other side, we're going to do movement building work. And our movement building work is going to take shape in the form of a new network called the LANDBACK Action Network. And organizations and people, over 1,400 organizations and people will be invited to become founding members of this network. And this network will do three things. It'll resource communities in the movement. It'll do organizing and training, and it will help move a political agenda that is about Indigenous people and Indigenous human rights. But more importantly, all of that stuff together will be about creating collective power so that we become a force to be reckoned with. And it is these types of networks that are going to be imperative as we rise up against authoritarianism, as we continue to fight for a democracy that includes Indigenous values in them.
Right.
And so we're organizing ourselves in a way. And when we were reflecting, on the 7 years as an organization, it became very clear that the NDN Collective's real power wasn't the fact that we were able to resource. It was the fact that we were able to help our people without asking anything in return. In the result, we built trust with people. We showed up for people. We helped resource things without asking for things in return. And one of the powers that exist is this network, this unofficial network of 1,400 partners, ranging from Guam to Puerto Rico to Arctic Village to the Zapatistas to the Passamaquoddy to the Dene to the Lakota to the Cree, all throughout the Indigenous world, organizing the people that we have been able to support and resource is the next iteration of our work. And that's where our resourcing and grant making, our training, our political work will be to sharpen our spirit and create more of a collective agenda that moves us forward.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I'm excited about, because I think those are the things that not only will create progress and to create a path forward for Indigenous people, but it has always been part of the mission of NDN Collective to build a collective power of Indigenous people, communities, and nations to exercise our inherent right to self-determination while fostering a world built on the foundation of justice and equity for all people in Mother Earth. That mission statement, that call to action is revolutionary in this moment. It is what's needed. And it's what this organization is founded on.
Yeah.
The other thing, is our Chisapa initiatives work. Not always do people recognize and realize that NDN Collective in this community acts like a community-based organization. Here in the Chisapa, in Mini Luzaha, we're organizing in our community. We have businesses in our community. We're community developers here. We're practitioners here doing this work. And so, a big chunk, half of our whole work is going to be focused on continuing to do that here. And I wanted to share and explain why. And then I'll give Wizi a chance to talk about some of that work. But one of the reasons why is that this whole organization and body of work, it grew out of doing place-based work. It grew out of having your hands in the soil, blood, sweat, and tears, building that Sundance Arbor, fighting on the front lines, growing chickens. I'm raising chickens. I didn't know nothing about chickens. We're over here raising chickens because that's what was required, And when we built NDN Collective and we decided to do and support people, all throughout the Indigenous world, we wanted to make sure that we were supporting Indigenous people from a place of having done that work ourselves. And that's why everybody who became a part of this collective, all of you, everybody was doing this work in their communities already. And we were bringing that wisdom and guidance here. As an organization, being from here and from this community, I said, hey, we got to make sure we continue to do this work. We got to make sure that we can continue to do community organizing work on a local level, that we can continue to do social impact work on a local level, that we continue to fight for LANDBACK on a local level. Because if we do it on a local level and we continue as organizers and practitioners, it actually will inform how we build the capacity for it to happen in other places. And it's an indigenous value when you're asked to go to another community. One, you only go to those communities if you're asked to. Secondly, if you're going to share wisdom, you're going to be sharing wisdom based on actual experience of having done that work in your own community and continuing to do that work in your own community. And so this balance of what we do both locally and nationally and internationally, that's on purpose. That is by design. There's a philosophy and a theory and values based in that approach. And NDN Collective will always do work both on a local level, on a national level, and on an international level. Because in all those places, people are making decisions about the lives and lands of Indigenous people. And this organization is dedicated to building Indigenous power. Therefore, our presence on all those levels is required. If we're trying to build power that's going to create a path towards liberation of our people. So I share all those things in this big picture because this pivot is us actually doubling down. I've watched how nonprofits, get impacted by things. And I've watched how nonprofits make desperate efforts to try to control the narrative of what people think about them. I don't give a shit what people think about us. I'll be straight up. I'll be straight up with you. You want to find me? You'll find me in the community doing the work. You'll find me at a ceremony down here, right? What I care about is that we're showing up to do something tangible for our people that actually is a path towards liberation, that is actually doubling down. And that's what we're doing here. It's not it might not be the sexiest work. It might not be the thing that gets the most attention, but it's the thing that's required in this moment for our people. And that's the part of this adaptation, this evolution, and this change that I'm very proud of. Because at the same time that this is hard, I'm proud that we're making the right decisions, that we're building something new, that we're creating a spear that's going to be able to move our people forward. And one of the things I'm excited about is our work, happening right here with the Gesapa initiatives. And Wizi, I recruited Wizi to come here. There were some things that he told me. I want to focus on land. I want to focus on Tatanka, our buffalo, our bison, and I want to focus on the language. If I can do those things, shit, I'll come work at NDN. And I was like, hell yeah, that right on. Those things will be in the DNA of what we do moving forward, because they're required for our freedom and required for our liberation too. So I want you to just share, briefly. We will have a whole show, just so the listeners know. We will have a whole show and maybe a couple shows dedicated onto the awesome work that we're doing here locally in the Gesapa. But I wanted you to just on high level touch base on, the 4 things and things that we're focusing on in this region, a part of that work.
Absolutely. When you go across Indian country, in real communities, they ask, where are you from? And people know if you're authentic or not, because they'll call your community too, Hey, what's up with this person? What's up with that person? And right. And if you're not legit, then they know, and so that's important. And so for NDN and our work, we can do all this big fancy stuff and say the big fancy words, but if we're not doing it, then where's our authenticity? Where's our legitimacy? And so I get really excited when I think about our local work and, under what we call Gesapa initiatives, our Black Hills initiatives, there's kind of really 4 big components of that. And the first is protect the Gesapa. And that's protecting what we have right now. And the United States may not recognize and say that we lost it and everything. Under natural law, under the Constitution, it's still ours. And so we're going to protect what's ours. And so a lot of our Gesapa protection work is about protecting the Black Hills against these illegal mining claims and these illegal mines. Right now, there is a permit request to do a mine right next to Peshla, which is a sacred site of the Lakota, one of our sacred sites. And these people want to put a mine right next to it. Well, no, we're going to fight that. We're going to fight that all the way. And there are other attacks, other mines. And so we're going to protect what's ours to the best of our ability, give it everything we got. And that is really the heart of what we talk about for our Gesapa, protect the Gesapa initiatives. But protect it for what? Protect it so we can get it back. And so we've been working on getting the Black Hills back. NDN, that's why I wanted to come to NDN, was to get the Black Hills back, to be able to say that, I helped do that. Yeah. Or at least I tried. At the very least, I tried. And so, we're the second component of that is the Gesapa Restoration Act, and going to Congress and get legislation to return the Black Hills to its rightful owners. That was through the treaty. The other part of that, in this part of the world, as Lakota, as Dakota people, you can't talk about land back. You can't talk about, healing in the earth and any of this unless you include the Tatanka, the buffalo. And so we have our Buffalo Bison Homelands Initiative. And, the idea is what happens if you think about land back for buffalo? Yeah. Because they deserve a homeland too. And so we have an initiative to create what's going to be one of the largest landscape conservation initiatives in North America. And certainly it's going to be the biggest buffalo initiative to date. And we want to create a homeland for them that stretches from the Black Hills to the Missouri River. And it can be even bigger than that. And it's going to take a lot of different people and entities and organizations all working together to make that happen. We just talked about like homelands for our buffalo. NDN's done a lot of work for our houseless relatives. And building on that, we have what's called our Waziata development. which is a 70-acre development that's going to have 150 affordable homes, businesses located on that property, so that our people can actually have a home in their own Black Hills.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to have the Chisapo Tipi Rapid Cities can finally be able to say that it's going to have an Indian center. And also on there right now on that development is Ocheti Shakoin Community Academy, a native school with native teachers teaching native children their language and their culture and preparing that next generation. That's already there, and that's going to grow and expand. And so we're really excited about what that is going to be and what it can be. And so those initiatives together comprise the Chisapa initiatives. And when you think about it, it's the embodiment of everything that our people are always talking about: the land, the buffalo, justice, our rights, youth, children, the future. And I'm just lucky I get to work on that and work with a really amazing team.
Yeah.
In closing, I wanted Gaby for you to share some few words about what you think about the future of the direction that we're going in, and words of advice and wisdom. I'm asking you from the perspective of both perspectives, your perspective as Tui and to Gaby, but also your perspective as a leader here as the vice president of NDN Collective.
Yeah. I think what has always been unique about NDN is we have been so rooted here as Ocheti Shakoin people here in the Chisapa. We have been that community-based organization, community-led organization, being very active here. And that has been, we've been very devoted to that. And so it is so exciting and gratifying to see the vision of what is still possible. This is still possible, and we believe in the possibilities. We've been able to achieve things that people have told us would never be able to be done, and we did it. So we believe in those possibilities here in the Chisapa. And at the same time, we have this international reach, so-called. But as we are beyond Indian country, right? We have always worked beyond Indian country. You know, our tribal nations of so-called U.S. You know, we have devoted ourselves. We have always said we are working with Indigenous people across Turtle Island. So beyond those colonial borders of Canada, north of the Medicine Line, Mexico, our island relatives. So that is what has always made us unique. And I continue to be grateful that we're able to continue to focus on that. I think there's a strong spiritual foundation that all of us come from. And I think that our people, despite all of the obstacles that they have faced over decades, hundreds of years of resistance, that strong spiritual foundation, that root is still here. And we're part of that. We're part of that. We're part of that prayer, that ancestral prayer. We're going to continue to do that prayer, make that prayer, and put that prayer into action. So, you know, we often talk about calls to action. Really, it's putting prayer into action. That's what we're doing here. And we're all part of an ancestral intention and hope and dream for us. You know, we are the grandchildren. We are grandchildren. And now we're blessed to be able to work on behalf of our children and our grandchildren. And so I'm honored to be part of that moving forward.
as we wrap up here, we shared a lot of information. More information to be shared in the coming weeks and months. These pivots, changes that we're making them in real time. NDN doesn't have some big money somewhere. I read, and I'm not on social media, but my whole family is. So they show me all kinds of stuff that people say in the comment section.
Posted, eh?
Yeah, exactly. They keep me posted. Holy man, the things that they say. For all of you that's on social media out there, y'all are crazy. I mean, I just put out there. They told me in a ceremony a long time ago that if Iktomi was the trickster, then the World Wide Web was his playground. So. Yeah. And I was telling you don't play with the Iktomi. You don't play with the trickster. So good luck out there online for all of you that are there. But NDN, every penny, every resource that we have, we've labored to have that. Nobody just gave us anything. We rolled up our sleeves. We were like hunters. Knowing that our people needed resources to be fed, to be housed, so that we have the ability to organize ourselves. And we created a modern strategy to go after those resources. And we were successful at it. And we are successful at it. Every resource that we have, we labor blood, sweat, and tears and energy to go get those resources and bring them back to the people. And that work is continuing now. While at the same time, we're pivoting. We're not just sitting on resources and just spending our time pivoting away, adapting, changing. We're actively hunting, while at the same time, we're thinking about how do we survive. While at the same time, particularly here at NDN, we're thinking about how do we create structure that helps people mobilize their communities so they can help themselves. And this takes time, and it takes effort, it takes labor to do that, and we're learning as we go. So in full transparency, when I talk about the LANDBACK Action Network, when I talk about this movement infrastructure that we're going to continue to build, we are just implementing that based on our lived experience, based on what we know. And in the process, we're going to continue to admit what we don't know so that we can continue to grow and learn and attract people. And so, and that's the work. I'm not intimidated by some timeline driven by white supremacy or settler colonialism. My timeline is the timeline on the Creator. We're going to continue to do this work. But what I can commit to here, and my elders have often said, be careful of what you commit to, because it's a vow, and then you have to follow through with it. But one thing that will always be true here at NDN is that we will fight fiercely for the people and for the land and for the children, for the four-legged, for the future. That is who we are. We are not scared of who's sitting in the Oval Office. We're not scared of who is occupying power at the United States government. We're not scared of the corporate powers that be. We recognize that they are the enemy. But recognizing somebody as the enemy does not mean you have to be afraid of them, because our ancestors are backing us. They instilled a responsibility into us. And so NDN is going to continue to do that work. And we're going to continue to do that work in the form that we just laid out. And if that form that we just laid out needs to evolve, then we will evolve it and we will change it. And that is our call to action. Often I have said, and put this challenge out there to organizers and to leaders throughout Indian country, is it possible that the best days of our people are actually in front of us and not behind us? And if that is true, what action does that invoke today? So to listeners out there, in this political context in 2025, in the moments that we're in, I pose that question to all of you that are listening. And I pose that question to humanity at this moment. Is it possible that the best days are in front of us and not behind us? And if that is true, what action does that invoke in you? At NDN, we've made that decision here. We have made the conclusion that we believe our best days are in front of us and not behind us. And everything that we do here as organizers, practitioners, storytellers, creatives, entrepreneurs, change makers, culture bearers is predicated on the idea that we believe that, and we're implementing solutions to move that forward and to build that future. So I'm fired up about where we're at in this moment, and it's an honor to do this work alongside both of you, alongside all of the amazing organizers, all of the amazing practitioners, all the amazing administrators, everybody here. You know, we show up for the people, we love the people, and we're going to continue to fight for the people. So we will continue to keep everybody updated in the coming months. And don't forget, one of the ways that you can continue to support this pivot and to support the work of NDN Collective is we have a campaign right now going on called For the People campaign. For the People campaign is a campaign that we have here at NDN Collective where people can donate to all of this work that we're doing to support this movement infrastructure, to support the resourcing of the movement, to continue to resource our creative resistance work, our organizing work, our political action work, and our work to help the land and help the people. So, you can check that out at ndnforthepeople.org and continue to support the work that's happening here. So we'll see you all on the next episode of LANDBACK for the People.
Ciao.
What you do? All right.
Right?
Good job.
Do you want to? Do you already have that?
I watched Dumb and Dumber recently when they're
For the Polaroid?